we all have this ability to live, well past 100. We all have the ability to have both health span and lifespan. It does not need to be limited. It needs to be something that we're pursuing actively. We need to be proactive about it. It is a way of life. And it's a way of life that involves, diet and exercise and sleep and community and proactive treatments and things like that. But it's absolutely for everybody.
What if I told you that the same mindset that builds championship teams also builds an extraordinary life? The same discipline that drives elite performance to greatness is the discipline that unlocks a longer, stronger, and more resilient future. This is where peak health meets peak performance, where we explore the science of longevity and the mindset of greatness. Because your legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you show up with every single day. This is the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. I'm Zach Dansell, your host. Welcome to another episode of the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. Today we have someone very special to me, Stephanie Masonic. She has her master's in clinical nutrition. She's a board certified clinical nutrition specialist, and she's a licensed dietary nutritionist. She currently is the clinical director at Nava Health, where she leads the integration of functional, regenerative, and longevity medicine into the everyday practice, and nearly 10 years dedicated to Nava. Stephanie has been instrumental in shaping the organization's growth and innovation. As Nava's former director of nutrition, she built the team to more than a dozen master's and PhD level certified nutrition specialists, creating the first and largest CNS-only team in the United States. Not only is she that, she's one of my best friends, she's one of my sisters, and I am just so proud and excited to have her on the show for us to dive into what it means to leave a legacy and what longevity means to us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So Steph, take us back to 18-year-old Steph.
Oh.
Take us through your personal health journey and where that all started for you.
Yeah. Well, it started not healthy at all. Unlike you and being a professional athlete at a super young age, I didn't have that in my life, right? So I grew up, my parents were divorced. I grew up with my father. He worked super hard to raise me, and it was just me and my sister. And, from 8 years old on, I was in charge of cooking. I became the head of the household. I made dinners for everybody and, learned how to just sustain myself with nutrition a little bit from a young age. But I was like every other high schooler. I was excited when we got the soda machine in our school, and, I was excited when we had the snacks in the school and, whatever. And, didn't eat super healthy. And, even through college, right? Didn't eat a great diet. Lived like probably most college kids, all fast food and junk, and, was out too much and probably drinking too much and just, not taking care of myself. And I felt terrible. I felt absolutely terrible. In my early 20s, I probably feel like what I hear most women in their 50s feeling like today when I talk to them as patients, And I had no energy. I had terrible anxiety, terrible depression. I had a very hard time just functioning day-to-day life. Always worked really hard, was able to always do that, right? But just really struggled. So, at some point I remember meeting this man, and I don't even remember his last name, and I don't even remember how he came into my world, but this guy came into my world. I remember his first name started with a P. That's all I remember. And he gave me a book about a plant-based diet. And 20, whatever, 18, 20, not even 18, I can't give myself credit. I want to say early 20-year-old Stephanie had no idea what that was. No idea. I had never heard of plant-based. I had no clue what vegans were. I had no clue what any of that world was. But something in me was intrigued by it, which was weird because I'd never been in the health space or anything. And so I read that book, and I very dramatically, you know me a long time, very dramatically changed my diet. So it went from, complete junk food, and alcohol diet, I would say, to, a completely vegan, plant-based diet, all organic, all well-sourced foods. I remember every plate I was trying to eat the rainbow. I was trying to do everything perfectly. And the change in my body and in my health that I felt at that time was wild. I remember it to this day. I remember all of a sudden I could think, I could focus. The anxiety that I was constantly crippled by was totally gone. didn't have it at all. I felt like I had like a new take at life, I guess. And, that really like fueled my whole journey into this world that you and I have been in for so long now. But
so
yeah.
I'm assuming you strongly believe, as I do, and knowing you, I know you do, but talk to us about the meaning food is medicine.
Well, let food be thy medicine. Food is medicine. Food, I've had the privilege of healing myself through food. I've had the privilege of walking hundreds, if not thousands, of patients and clients that have come through the doors of Nava over the past decade, to health through food. And I think food, especially in this world and especially with women, gets a very bad rep. We really get to a point where food is almost like an enemy, or it's like a hot stone. Like, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of disordered eating, whether it becomes a full-blown eating disorder or not. And I really want people to like reframe how we think about food. It's such a beautiful way to connect in a community, to cook together as friends, as family, to grow your own food, even if it's just like a tomato plant in the backyard. It doesn't have to be like a whole regenerative farm. But just, I love the community that food creates. It reminds me of growing up and making food for my dad and my sister, and, have us having dinners and things together. I just, that's what food means to me. So when food is thy medicine, it's the medicine in the sense that it brings community together. Community is absolutely critical for health. You cannot have health without community. And then obviously you can very dramatically shift the trajectory of your health just by tiny little tweaks in the diet.
So we say food is medicine, but let's dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
Can food actually heal and cure?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it, right? I've seen people in boatloads of pain and to the point where they're not able to ambulate without pain, they're not able to walk without pain, or they have mobility issues. We change that diet and we reduce the inflammation, and all of a sudden they're up and moving. And we both know movement is critical, right? You can't have health without movement. So, I've seen that. I've seen diabetics and folks with neurodegenerative diseases dramatically change their diets and see their symptom progression slow, or even reverse, right? And I think sometimes, and it's not really, it's a result of the medical system. Doctors they know a lot of things, but one thing they're just not taught is nutrition. So it just doesn't become part of the conversation, and it has to be. We can't talk about health without talking about nutrition and what we're putting in our bodies all day, every day.
Right, and it's crazy to think that the doctors, the nurse practitioners, the PAs that are going through medical school, spending all this time, years, residency, most curriculum at these medical schools don't require a single hour of nutrition.
No, it's wild. I remember when I first learned about that. One of my mentors actually, taught me about this, and I think the stat I heard, and we'll have to fact check everything, but the stat I heard was they get about 4 hours of nutrition training in medical school, and the majority of it is around gout and, high purine foods, which is a whole other topic for another podcast. But, I think now I will say, like, I'm very encouraged. You and I both have the luxury and the privilege of working alongside a lot of clinicians over the years. And I will say, like, at least Nava clinicians, the ones that have come into our world, they are the ones that are going outside of the norm, and they are learning nutrition, right. And they're making nutritional medicine a real core of how they practice. And you can see it. I mean, if you can see it in the patients they treat, right? Like, you can see that they just come alive, and you can see the really dramatic impact that nutrition has on someone's overall health.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of the stats, right?
Yeah.
70% of the U.S. is either overweight or obese. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of the data that is coming out, right, is because of what we're eating, right?
Yeah.
The ultra-processed foods, the, high inflammatory seed oils,
right.
The food dyes, the sugar.
Right.
The fact that our doctors of the world, that, we're putting our lives into their hands. Let's talk about that health, that revolution that we're creating here.
Yeah.
Right? How the doctors and providers here, because we know the importance of medicine, that food truly is medicine, that right. It can heal, that it can treat. It might not be the main cure,
mm-hmm.
but it's
certainly part of that conversation
of every single treatment plan
Yeah.
to cure or treat,
Yeah.
to heal yourself. So we know that there's a gap, right? Nothing in the curriculum for these people that we're putting their lives in the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us as a NAVA provider, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about what we've been able to implement here to, be able to train our providers about nutrition.
Yeah.
How that is truly being applied as we have a team of the medical side, your doctors, nurse practitioners teaming up for these super personalized plans, right? With our team of nutritionists, right?
Right.
How powerful is that really?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I haven't found it anywhere else. Like nowhere near how we do it. And and I'm not, I'm smiling because that has nothing to do with me or you. That has everything to do with our clinicians. And, we have been very blessed over the years, Zach, to have some of the best, absolute best nutritionists and clinicians, work for NAVA. And I think what we do differently, and this has always been, and you've kind of always known this about me, but since day one when I joined NAVA, right, I joined in a position that no longer exists, I was a health coach. I wasn't even a nutritionist yet, and I realized very soon that what we created, even back then, was needed to be built upon it and was something that differentiated us, right? So as I was kind of growing up in the ranks and went back and got my master's and like moved more into the world of nutrition and leadership at NAVA, it's always been my absolute mission that our nutritionists work laterally with our physicians. We don't have any kind of hierarchy in that way at NAVA because you cannot have health without both. Therefore, they are lateral. And, a lot of our, for a long time, we had our provider meetings where we had all the medical providers and all the nutritionists in the same meeting discussing cases, integrating care, coming up with personalized treatment plans for people. And you just do not see that in regular medicine. And it's a shame, it's really a shame, I think, in the regular medical world. And I kind of always say this jokingly, and it's sad, but it's true. Like the nutritionists are looked at as like the bottom of the rung, the dirt on the provider's shoe. It's like, oh yeah, go see a nutritionist. They'll teach you how to count calories and, color code your food, but that's not what nutrition's about. And I think, one of the reasons I love NAMA and I keep, it is such a passion for me is because you've always given me that space. The clinicians have always given me that space to grow those two teams together and to integrate care together. And I think that creates something super, super special that you just cannot find and do not find anywhere else. Even if you go to other clinics, right, that have provider teams and nutrition teams, you don't have them going through the same training that we do, right? As you know, we train everything we do at NAVA is very protocol driven in a personalized medicine space, right? So everybody's coming from that same practice philosophy. Everybody is treating with the same, goal in mind. And I think having that environment is so critical, right? Like if you just have everybody kind of doing their own thing, practicing their own philosophy, then you can't really, you can't come together as a team and really create change. Yeah.
No, it's like they say that, if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yep.
And if you want to go far and go together.
Yep.
And that's one thing I think we've done really well implementing here is that there isn't a hierarchy, right? It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your position is. I've told you guys this from the very beginning. If you can add value, if you can bring knowledge that can get us closer to our mission, right? To be able to help people with what they're currently going through or just to overall help them with longevity, right? Mm-hmm. Then you should be able to sit at the table and be able to help make those decisions. In the modern medicine world, doctors are perceived and viewed as God. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've done really well here is that everything is just as important as the other.
Yeah.
Right? Our doctors are just as important as our nutritionists. Yeah. Just as important as our nurses, just as important as our massage therapists and acupuncturists, right? Because everyone works on a different system. Everyone works at a different level. Yeah. But we're all working together for that one specific client at that one specific time.
Exactly.
To get them to that next step of longevity.
Yeah.
So it leads me to, my next question is, it's the Legacy and Longevity podcast. Mm-hmm. Who is longevity medicine for?
Well, if you're a human, it's for you. It's really for everybody. And I think the biggest mistake, and it's just a lack of education and lack of awareness, right? But I think the biggest mistake people make is we assume longevity medicine should only be some tool we pick up when we're older, right? Or like when things start to fall apart and let's start to try to extend life at that time. But, I think if we can really if we can shift that mindset and we can get everybody to understand that, we all have this ability to live, well past 100. We all have the ability to have both health span and lifespan. And it does not need to be limited, right? But it needs to be a conversation, and it needs to be something that we're pursuing actively. We need to be proactive about it. It's not something that's just going to fall in your lap. And it's not, and the other part about it too is longevity medicine is really, it's not really like you come in, you get one treatment and you're done and you're going to live forever. It is a way of life, and it's a way of life that involves, diet and exercise and sleep and community and proactive treatments and things like that. But it's absolutely for everybody.
Yeah. And I think, I was able to learn and embrace that as a football player, right? Because, longevity for my career as a football player, lived on me doing the right things, right? Mm-hmm. Me showing up for my diet, me showing up for my workouts, me showing up to do everything that I possibly could to perform at the highest level, right? Mm-hmm. And I've kind of taken that mindset of, just because I'm not playing football anymore, just applying that to overall life, right? Because life is also about longevity, right?
Yeah.
Now that I have kids, I want to be here as long as possible so I can be here for that, right? It's the craziest thing to think about that, we're literally training and raising the ones that we can't live without.
Yeah.
To ultimately live without us.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
And to think that one day, my kids are going to be out of the house, they're going to be, finding their partner, right? Mm-hmm. Starting their own life, right? It scares the shit out of me.
It's wild.
that one day,
yeah,
they might not need me, and so
yeah,
it's
it's the toughest lesson as a parent, right?
It is,
a
and
really tough lesson.
So where I was headed is just now that just like holding them in my hands, I want to be here as long as possible.
Yeah.
So just like I did everything that I could to, have the longevity in my career in football, I want that in life so that I can be here as long as possible for when that day does come that they do need me, I can be here for them.
Yeah.
So let's switch back to what you said earlier. I'm going to put you on the spot. It's going to be a little bit controversial.
Oh, no.
Let's talk about vegan diets.
I knew this was going to come back to bite me.
To all the social media influencers, for all the, people that like to call us woo-woo medicine.
Yeah.
Talk to us about vegan diets. Is that something that we should do? Do you believe in it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think to give an answer to, obviously I could give a quick answer, but I think to really answer that, we got to talk about just nutrition in general and diets in general. There is no one size fits all diet for all human beings. And anybody that tells you that there is, that every human should be on a paleo diet or every human should be on a vegan diet, does not understand anything about nutrition. And you should run for the hills, right? So, do I think there's value in a vegan diet? Of course, right? I do think there's value in it. I don't think for most people it is something that is meant to be long term. I have I've just had the privilege of working with so many people over so many years, and in general, a vegan diet is just not meant to be long term for folks. I see folks get a lot of blood sugar imbalances long term, a lot more inflammation because they tend to do a lot of grains because they're trying to fill up, because they don't have quite balanced macros, and it's hard to do. And the other thing too is to really do a vegan diet where you're hitting not just your macros, which everybody knows, right, but also all your micronutrient needs, all your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, to hit all that and to really make it something sustainable. That is a full-time job, and you have to supplement, so you got to have some money. So it's not really, I always joke around. I knew this guy back in college that was a vegan, and everybody thought he was so healthy and everything. But that guy lived on applesauce and French fries. Like, those things are vegan, so it doesn't matter that So I guess the bottom line is, I think it served a purpose for me at the time that I did it because it was such a dramatic change from what I had done before. But for me, eventually, I started feeling terrible. Like when I had such a health revolution and awakening, but over after about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I felt so terrible. I mean, lots of minerals were low, lots of nutrients were low, and I was breastfeeding at the time, and I could not sustain it, right? So I had to bring meat back in the diet, and did that in a very thoughtful way. And I will say to the vegans out there, I know that's not easy. I had a little, like, at the time, right? I had a little moral conflict over that because I was in the little vegan world and I was in all the things, right? But it just wasn't working for my body anymore, and that was a really hard decision to make. But yeah.
So I guess, for all the doom scrollers on Instagram at night, seeing these, health influencers online.
Yeah.
Just talk about why it's important that, we have these tools like a vegan diet, like, carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Just talk about the importance of working with a nutritionist, right? Working with a provider who has the education and the training to be able to use these tools and these interventions the way that you should be used, right? Because there isn't a one size fits all, so talk to us about the importance of, finding a highly educated nutritionist or provider.
Zachary, you and I could talk about this forever because this is so critical. Even myself, I run my nutrition through a nutritionist, you know what I mean? And I know about nutrition. No, I think it's so critical because, again, we're all busy. We all have jobs that we're doing. We're all showing up on a daily basis. We have kids, we have partners, we're running around, we're trying to exercise, we're trying to do all the things. Nutrition is it's not a one size fits all. So it should be personalized to you. It should be personalized to you based off some kind of data, not just a feeling, and not just because this is the latest trend diet or because this influencer that you follow is looks the way you want to look and therefore you should follow their diet. That's, you really should go through, you should go through testing. You should get biomarker testing. We should look at, what does your inflammation look like? What's your cardiovascular status look like? What do your hormones look like? What does your gut health look like? Most importantly, right? I want to know what all that looks like before I even remotely say this diet might be appropriate for you. And I think, that gets lost in the sauce a lot of times, but I think it's super important. And nutrition needs to be personalized. And the last part I'll say about it is it's not like let's say I'm seeing you as a patient today, and we decide, okay, at this time in your life, this is the best diet for you. But that doesn't mean for the next 40 years of your life, that's the diet you should follow. It's something that we're constantly tweaking and optimizing over time. And, it requires check-ins, it requires updated, data and collection and lab work and things like that, because we're always changing. We're changing based off, our hormones. We're changing based off our stress levels, how we're sleeping. We're changing based off our environmental exposures, what are we around, and, it's unfortunate, but I'll say too, like I've seen people really get married to the idea. I mean, die hard to I have to follow this specific diet, and it's and I've seen people, Zach, put themselves in the emergency room because of that. I've literally seen it. I've seen really, really serious side effects from people just trying to stick to a dogma that they've heard on whatever social media. So it's so critical, and it's critical not just to work with someone that has the experience, but someone that you jive with, that you connect with, that gets you and you can understand, but that also is working on data.
Great point. You've been around me long enough. Yeah. We've worked together long enough. What is the most important thing in business?
Data, baby.
Okay. So what is the most important thing in the medical space?
It's the same thing.
Right. So Let's talk about data. Mm-hmm. Right. Why is it important to continuously do labs, right? Why is an annual physical not enough?
Yeah, because it's just simply not, right? I mean, it's in my opinion, it's not ethical to treat just simply based off symptoms. It's just not ethical. You're missing data points that you can very easily acquire, So for me, I've never understood that. I remember back in the day, as I was learning this stuff before I was at NAVA and I was practicing on my own, trying to talk to my primary care physician, trying to get a couple tests added. And I swear it was like I was asking for his firstborn child. It should not be that serious. Decisions should always be made from a state of data, right? What do we have? What do we know? What is the experience we've been through? What are the outcomes we're expecting? And it shouldn't be based off a whim or a random symptom. It needs to be data driven.
Which is it's almost completely opposite of the modern medical system.
Well, yeah, because it certainly is. Well, and unfortunately, And, and it's sad because I know you and I both, we know a lot of doctors, we know a lot of clinicians that, are in and out of that conventional medical system. And I think they want to do the right thing. I think they want to get the data. I don't know any doctor. I think most doctors want that data, right? But their hands are tied, and unless they're in a totally cash-based business, they are tied. But to insurance, they're tied to, standards of care, and they are expected to follow a certain regimen of, if this, then that, if this, then that, and that's how they're trained. And I get it. And I think, that stuff is where that stuff in my head is incredibly important is in an emergency setting. Right? If I have a heart attack and I show up at the ED, I want all those medical practitioners to have a A, B, C, D, E, this is what we do, and it just flows, right? But when you're talking about chronic disease, it's there's so much more to the conversation, and we have to break this chronic disease free. We have to kind of separate emergency medicine. Like if I break a bone, I'm going to I'm going to regular conventional medicine, right? But we have to create space for this conversation around chronic disease, getting away from whack-a-mole symptom management, getting deeper with folks, actually talking to patients, spending time with patients, running more than 2 labs, right? And doing it more frequently, to your point, than a once-a-year physical where, I don't know about you, but last time I actually did that with a physician, I got 4 minutes of his time.
Yeah.
Like, that's not enough. Of 365 days and I'm talking to you for 4 minutes, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know anything about my health. I don't have time to tell you anything about my diet, lifestyle, sleep. And you have to have those things in the conversation if you're really going to be practicing health.
So, if that is so important, right, let's talk about the healthcare system today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some data points, right? We are in a chronic disease pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? There's no doubt about that. Chronic disease has skyrocketed. What's going to be that shift? Is it reversible? Can we stop it? Can it be fixed?
Yeah, I do think 100%. Listen, I believe, and I've been blessed to see humans do some really awesome things in my lifetime, and I 100% think it's reversible. But I think if we're all sitting around waiting for a system to just magically change, I think we're delusional. I think it's going to take people, and that's what's really cool about Nava. I get this privilege of just like talking to people, right? Real life people that are trying to get their health together, and they're trying to figure out, this ailment or symptom or whatever they had for so long, and it's just never been figured out, And I think it's such a privilege to see people actually get better and and prevent and reverse chronic disease. It's very possible. It just needs that time and commitment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went back and got your master's in nutrition, right? Where you gained a bunch of clinical experience. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you made yourself over to the dark side of operations and
yes.
business, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's this stigma out there,
yeah,
where medicine is separate from operations or business, right? Where, how we do it is completely different.
Yeah.
Again, it goes hand in hand, just like in health, longevity, to live the most optimal life, right? It is treating the whole body. It's not just treating one system. It's not just worrying about your immune system, heart health, brain health, gut health, right? Mm-hmm. It is about the synergy of all of those coming together to truly live that optimal lifestyle.
Right.
So talk to us about when you made that transition, right? What was it that you quickly realized or learned, how that can be applied, on the clinical side? Yeah,
that's a good question. I think, where can I start with that? I think for me it was, I remember, when you and I worked in one of the clinics in Maryland, right? I remember sitting and having this realization that, like, at that moment in my life, I wanted to have an impact. I really wanted to impact, bigger. I was very lucky and very blessed to have that, again, be able to work with folks one-on-one. And I got to see, like, Zach, when I'm telling you, it was so fulfilling, right? When I first started, like, my baby girl days in Nava, right? Like, just started seeing patients in that way and just started seeing lives completely change and people just, as I haven't seen patients in years, and I still get emails from patients from back in the day, right? And it's just because it's the power of what we do and how we help heal and work with folks. But eventually, I think what happened was, I got to a point where I realized this is going to take a while if I go one at a time, just meeting one person at a time. So I wanted I wanted to have more impact on the actual clinicians treating the patients. I wanted to come like a little bit out of patient care, help to implement protocols and help to really be that like backbone for the clinical team. And that's what I would describe, like now, fast forward a million years to where we are now, that's what I would describe that relationship between operations and clinical staff. Like, the clinicians are the front lines. They're out there. They have to know their stuff. We don't mess around at NAVA, and they know that, and they work very hard. We don't have any clinicians at NAVA that are not working hard to follow our protocols and expand our protocols and learn more and do more. But I think what operations gives them is a backbone to practice effectively. And and what's really, again, like this really cool theme that we have at NAVA, there's no hierarchy, and we all work together. So when we have we have our biweekly directors meetings, and we have medical directors, we have myself, we have a nutrition directors in there, we have operations staff in there, because again, everybody gets a seat at the table. Everybody's experience is important to help us continue to take this medicine to the masses. And I'll say this too, like, again, working with a lot of physicians over the years, they would say this to you, that they're not business people. Mm-hmm. They have not been to business. Some have MBAs, and that's a gem, right? But for the most part, your physicians do not have experience or training in business. And so I can't tell you how many physicians have come to me over the years and just been like, thank God you guys are here, because like I don't know how to do any of this. I don't know how to how to do all the finance piece and the whatever, the technology and whatever it is. So I think that's what makes us really unique, is that we all work together. And you really can't have a successful practice without both.
Yeah. And you said something about wanting to make an impact.
Yeah.
We call the show Legacy and Longevity, right? What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy quite simply means leaving this place better than I found it. And I think legacy, I see that most through my children, right? Like, I want to create, the world is wild right now. There's a lot of things happening right now. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of polarization. There's a lot of opinions, but my goal really is to always lead with love and service. I've always been trained that way since I was a little girl, and everything I do, I try to come from a place of love and service to others. And I think that is what legacy is, right? Leading with love and service, and leaving the world a better place than you found it.
What does it mean to you to be a great leader?
I think it means to have a powerful and positive impact, whatever that is, right? Like whether that's on my staff or our staff, or whether that's on, a potential prospect that might want to come to NAVA, or some, whatever. I think it's, I think that's genuinely what it is wanting to, like, stripping all the titles and all the ego and all the things, and just being of service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's right. 'Cause as a leader, we are in service, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're not successful at leading our teams, at leading our clients to success, right? Then what do you really have?
You have nothing.
Right? You have no business.
Right.
So, let's go back to, you said you learned lessons, right? You learned through failures. Talk a little bit more about that. Why is it so important that we fail?
Oh, failure is like everything. And I know I'm laughing because you and I talk about this a lot, but if you never fail, you have never really tried anything hard. And if you're going, and unfortunately I have seen people go through life in that way, and their worlds get very small, and it's sad to watch. Their worlds get very small. They are, one task is super overwhelming because they just have so much fear of like not doing it right, or not whatever. But I look at it, and people notice about me, I am a bull in a china shop. I don't care. I'll be the first to just try and make the mistake and whatever, because that's what we have to do to just like learn and get better. And, you cannot have growth without failure. You absolutely cannot. And if you're not looking back on the failures that you've had and learning from them, then you're also missing the boat, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I've made tons of, not just in leadership, but in life in general. I have failed innumerable times, but I've also had the privilege, and I mean this, of picking myself up from those failures and the power that I get from that, and and it's not me doing it, right? It's a power greater than myself, and that comes in my life in a whole bunch of different ways, like in you and my friends and the people that I love and my children, and and I will always be grateful for the failures, because I would not be who I am today without all those crazy days. Yeah.
What would you say those failures are worth it?
Oh, it's a tough answer, but hell yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're hard at the time. It's like, you and I've been beating our heads against the wall many times in this company. It's just part of business, and it's part of growth. And it's, we've had many failures where we're like, man, in hindsight, could have done that differently, right? But again, like it just makes you stronger. It makes you more resilient. It makes you more flexible, right? I think it's critical.
No, I mean, I think the price of progress is pain.
100%.
Learning through those failures,
Yep.
right? Those are the most valuable lessons, right?
Right.
I say this all the time, but can't have the greens without the reds and the yellows.
Yeah, you do say that.
Right? But in reality,
Yeah.
most people don't like to experience pain.
No.
Right? They like comfort.
It's not comfortable, right? Yeah, they don't like it.
But that is truly how we grow, right? That is truly how we get one step closer.
Yeah.
To our mission. And whatever that mission is for you, right?
Right.
Not everyone has the ambitions that you or I do.
Right. And that's okay.
And that is okay,
Yeah.
right? That they have their own dreams,
Right.
their own beliefs. But talk to me more about your dreams, your beliefs, right?
Yeah.
What is success in your role? What does success look like for your mission?
That's a good question. It's a big question. I think what success looks like for me is I always measure that, Zach, by, and this is kind of cheesy, but I always measure success not by money. I could care less. I could care less about money. I could care less about, fancy things, cars and houses and boats and things. I could care less about any of that. That's not important to me. It's about the type of woman I am, the type of mother I am, the type of friend I am, and then can I put my head on the pillow at night and go to sleep? Do you know what I mean? Am I a woman of integrity? And so every decision that I make, comes from that space, right? I try to learn as much from my mistakes. I try to ask for help and advice as much as possible. I try to reach across the aisle as much as I can. I try to constantly strip ego, and it's hard. Like, it's so hard, just being a human. We all are like raging egos, right? And it's so hard to just strip that away and be vulnerable and just do what you need to do. But I really think success, that's what success is to me.
You said you're, a mother of 3, right?
Yeah.
And a single mother of 3. How do you balance being a full-time entrepreneur, leading a medical practice of 100 people, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance your work? What's your viewpoint on work life?
Seems like you wanted to ask me that this whole time. It's funny. I haven't been in interviews lately, but in any interview I've done with anybody that's come on board with Nava, I always ask them this question, like, what does work-life balance mean to you? Because the reality is, if you want to accomplish something as big as this in your life, you have to get rid of this idea that these two things are separate. That like one turns on during the day and then somehow magically shuts off at a certain time, and another one turns on at night and then shuts off. It's not realistic. I also think it's like a terrible experience. I've done that, and not really at Nava, because I've always been super passionate at Nava, but I've done that in the past in other positions for sure, where I'm just like, this is a clock in, clock out, I'm good, But I really think work-life balance needs an overhaul. Right. And I think for me, it's not really about balance. It's just my life. My kids will sometimes, they know me, right. And they learn, they've grown up in Nava. And so they see all of us working, and they know what the deal is. And, they always joke, because if somebody's staying at my house, like if somebody's visiting or whatever, and they ask, oh, are you done work for the day? They always say, she's never done, because I'm not. I'm always thinking about it. And it's not a task to me. Like, I know some people will hear that and they'll think, oh, that sounds terrible. I don't want that kind of stress. It's like, It's not stressful. Like, I love what we do.
It's something that you choose. Right?
Genuinely, yeah.
It's chosen pain.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like super rewarding too, because, you know, how many times have you and I just been like grinding on something for months, and then we figure it out. And then all of a sudden it becomes a thing. And then all, you know, like just even some of the things we brought, like, you know, we bring on some kind of treatment here, and it's like all these months of like figuring out and preparation and protocol development and pricing and blah, 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 blah. And all these things we have to figure it out, right? And it's not easy, and it's arduous work, and it's day in and day out. And, you know, but then comes the reward of like how that helps people, you know, and like, you know, we've seen that help your dad's health immensely. We've seen that help patients' health immensely. I mean, certainly help my health immensely. So, you know, I just think we just need to restructure the work-life balance thing. And I think, I'll say this too, if you're in a career, if you're in a space where you feel like you need to escape from that thing, maybe that's like not the right path for you. And I don't know what the path looks like for you, but, you know, if you're miserable in your job, you know, I feel for you. Yeah. You know?
Who has been a major influence or mentor in your life?
That's a tough question, because I'm not going to say you because you're here. I'm going to say, you know, I think about this because I know I figured this question would be coming, and I don't know if I have one, and I think that's like where I'm really lucky in life, to be honest. You know, I grew up in a very small family, right? I have 0 aunts, uncles, or cousins. I have 1 sister. I grew up with my dad, right? So we were a really small, tight little family. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, you know, and so I didn't have, you know, very, very like different from how you grew up, right? You have bajillions of brothers and sisters and your parents and family and everything. I didn't have a big community like that. So I've always been really lucky to have like these amazing adults come in and out of my life that have just been like, or friends or whatever, that have just been great mentors and have like really taught me amazing life lessons. You know, I remember even back in high school, I had teachers that were, you know, incredibly impactful on, you know, on my life in a lot of different ways, right? One of those teachers is the one that taught me all, you know, when you and I do all of our editing and stuff and all the grammar and all that stuff. I mean, he's the one that really inspired that. And I remember writing 50 and 100-page term papers in high school, and I just loved that stuff, you know? And then as I got older, you know, again, just meeting people throughout my journey that really taught me some like invaluable life lessons. Again, like in my 20s, I came into a group of women that really taught me to lead with love and service, you know, and to get out of myself and be useful to others and be of service to others. And that really became my doctrine. And then, you know, I met you, and you challenged me in ways that sometimes I don't know I can do, you know, but that's what I love about you is like, that's our shtick is you know I can do it, and you push me to do it, and I need that kind of person in my life. Like, I don't want to be around somebody that's taking the safe route all the time, you know. So I think the long-winded answer to that is that I've been blessed to have a lot of mentors, and I look in mentors in everybody, right? My children are my mentors. You know, I learn more from my oldest Sophia than I do from any other human on this planet. You know what I mean? They teach me lessons all day, every day. So I think you just have to constantly be looking out for the lessons around you and trying to connect and not think you're better. And you know, never, Zachary, would I ever have thought that I would have connected so strongly with a football player, you know, like yourself, that's, you know, almost a decade younger than me. We come from very different backgrounds, but, you know, you mean the world to me, and you inspire me on a daily basis. And like, not many people get to say that about people that they show up with and work with every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of my important philosophies of leadership is, you know, the team that you have.
100%.
You know, what defines a successful leader to me is by looking at their team. Right? Are they successful in what they want to do? And, you know, I take the approach of, I'm going to push you as far as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Because if there's something that you want bad in life, if there's something that you want bad enough in life, there's not anything that we can't achieve.
That's exactly
if we really want to.
That's exactly right.
So I'm going to push you as far as I possibly can. Until you tell me not to.
Yeah, but I think it's different than most people, right? Like most people do not want to be pushed. They're scared to be pushed. They want to stay small because they're scared of failing. They're scared of what they're going to look like to everybody else. And I think at some point, and you've helped me immensely with this, Brock, right? Like one of our teammates, Brock, he's helped me immensely with this. Is just, who gives a shit? Who cares what anybody else thinks? It's like, I certainly am not thinking about anybody else. I'm thinking about myself, just like everybody else is, you know? So nobody cares, if I let that stop me, I would never be clinical director.
Yeah.
Because I have to work with physicians that I am not a physician. Do you know what I mean? And it takes a certain level of, something to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, you have to have this delusion.
You have to be delusional.
You got to have this
Yep.
delusion about your own success and about what you truly want in life.
Yeah.
And if it's truly something that you want, there's not anything that's going to stop you. Nothing's going to get in the way. It doesn't matter what obstacles, what adversity comes, right? It doesn't matter if you fail, right? Get back up and do it.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, you control your own destiny.
That's right.
Right? We are the controllers of our own life, our own health, right? We get to dictate how long or short we live. And, like I said, you just got to have this. People might think that you're delusional, right?
They will. Not might. Let's just be clear. They will.
I mean, you guys tell me
especially the people that are close to you.
Especially, right? Because you guys tell me all the time that I'm crazy.
You're crazy. I mean, you are.
But, it's something about it that, like, I feed off of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
don't tell me I can't.
Not you telling me that I'm crazy, but people telling me that I can't do something.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been told that, from a very young age, right? I grew up a fortunate life. My parents blessed me, where I didn't have to go through some of the struggles that I've seen others go through, right? But I'm a very observant person, right? So I see what it looks like on the other side,
right?
I see that, grass isn't always greener on the other side, right?
Right.
Grass is where you water it. No, the grass is green where you water it.
Yeah. Everything, what you're trying to say is like everything is there for you. You just need to pick up the tools. And I think, and I did this a really long time, so I'm certainly not saying anything I didn't personally struggle with, right? Like you have to, in my experience, to really like take this thing to the next level, whatever the thing is for you, right? Like there has to be a willingness to do the scary shit. There has to be a willingness to look stupid. And I'm gonna tell you this. If your closest friends and family are kind of poo-pooing you, like you're on the right path. You know what I mean? Like because they, that's what I see happen all the time. And it's happened to me personally. I've had close friends and family just be like, "What are you doing? Like you work way too much. Like this doesn't make any sense. What do you, don't you just want to like clock out and like forget about it and be home and like watch TV and just like take a break and like go on a thing?" And I'm like, no. Like for me personally, it's just not, I don't want to do that. I've done that. I did that. My whole 20s were, a lot of waiting around for something to happen, and feeling entitled, like I should get something, and it's just, that's not the way it works. You got to work hard.
But it's not just about life, right? It's in all things that we do, right? It's your health, right?
Exactly.
If you want to get in shape, if you want to get that six pack, if you're trying to get off 10, 15 pounds, if you want to live a longer, healthy life, right? There, regardless of what it is, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's hard being sick. It's hard being healthy, right? So you have to, at the end of the day, pick your hard.
1,000%. And I think too, like, again, it's not going to be, we have this medical system that's taught us like, oh, you have an ill and here's a pill, like a pill for every ill, or, oh, you come and you do one thing that takes no effort, right? Like show up for surgery. The effort is you have to drive there, but then they're knocking you out. They're doing the surgery, right? Or take this pill. The effort is you have to take the pill. Like, it's this reactive model, and it doesn't really lead to health, right? It leads to reactive medicine. So I think, like, taking that same mindset to health, right? Like, you're not going to have, like the influencer gym body and the perfect, biomarkers without putting effort in. It's not going to be a quick fix, guys. It's not going to be a diet you saw on Instagram that you follow for a week, that you have a cheat day. It's not going to be a magical supplement. You just take 1 or 2 supplements for a week and it changes your whole. It's not going to be that. It's going to be consistent and persistent action over time, and sticking to a plan. And it has to be, like to your point, has to be that in health, has to be that in business, has to be that in, same thing with my kids, right? Like if I'm not consistent with them, my house becomes absolute chaos, super quick, as you've probably seen, right? And I fall into that trap where I get overwhelmed because I'm a human, but I try my best to be like a consistent and persistent state of like, steady state for them. And I think that's what you got to do.
What's one health practice that's a non-negotiable on a daily basis?
I can tell you that in 2 seconds, and it is my morning sauna time that you always interrupt. No, I love the sauna. It is my space for everything, right? So every morning I drop my kiddos off at school and I go to the sauna and I sit in there for about 30, 40 minutes and I just, I meditate. I think about the day ahead. I do breath work. I stretch. Like I get connected to my body. Sometimes, it's not ideal, right? Sometimes we're in a meeting and I'm in the sauna and sometimes I got to just do what I got to do. But for the most part, that's my quiet time. I have no kids. I have no you. I have no everybody else. I have no providers. I have no nutritionists. I have nobody, right? And I can just, because I think you need that. I think especially at this level that we're at, where you're constantly grinding and constantly going a million miles an hour, like you need that space where you can just center, reset, prioritize what you're doing for the day and not just be like a whirling dervish going through life.
Is it all worth it?
Fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It ain't easy, but it is worth it. It is worth it because I know my kids are going to grow up in a different system. I know that. Like, I know we are going to impact, and not just us, everybody in this movement. I see it happening already. We both see it happening already. Like, people are waking up. And I think COVID had a big part in that. And I think people started taking, health seriously, and I think we're seeing an evolution in that. And I'll tell you, like, my kids, it really shocks me. Like they know basic stuff that I did not know at their age. They know what's healthy, what's not healthy. They're all into sports and they're very active and, they all have some kind of like, they do yoga and they have like this whole, and like, what a great like head start in life that they're getting, but yeah, totally worth it.
What's the best advice that you ever heard or received?
That's a good one. I think there's so many. Oh my God, my brain is like flooding with them. But one thing I always come back to, and I say this before anything, I said it today before I came here, I say it before any, public speaking I have to do, any kind of, tough, difficult conversation with a staff member, something like that, right? And that is be brief, be honest, and be seated. And because I can tend, when I get nervous and when I get in my feelings and when I let emotions take over, I go all over the place, right? So it just helps me like stay centered, come back to what's important, which is, love and service to others, and come back to that space. So that's it for me.
Okay. I think I love that because I also, practice that, no matter what's going on in life, right? It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
Right. It'll pass, right? Seasons come and go, right? There's going to be storms in life, right? Adversity is promised to us all.
I'm sure.
But those who are willing to embrace it, right? Embrace the suck, embrace the pain, right? You're going to get through it a lot quicker than someone who gets emotional about it, right?
Oh my gosh,
who truly, gets, just in their head about it, right? You're going to get stuck. And so, the metaphor of the cow and the bull, right? In a storm. Right? When a storm comes, the cow, they run away from it.
Yeah.
Which only keeps them in that storm longer.
In that fear state, yeah.
In that fear state.
Yeah.
But the bull, right? They're going to run right through it, right? Because they know that the sooner that they embrace it, the quicker they can get to that storm.
Yeah.
Out to the other side and see the light at the end of the tunnel. But knowing that this will pass.
Yeah.
So staying centered, understanding that it's going to be okay.
It will be.
It is something that, I practice daily, regardless of what's going on, no matter what adversity that we're facing. The world could be ending, right? I have comfort knowing that I get to spend so much time with the people that I love.
Yeah.
Circle's small, but it's tight.
Yep.
Right. And it's done like that on purpose.
Yep.
Right. Because those are the people that I truly care about, right? Because I know that they care about me.
100%.
I know that they would give their life for me and I would give their life for them. Like, there's nothing more important in life to me than family.
Yeah.
Right? So being able to spend as much time with family, right? That's what it's all about, right?
100%.
And if we're not doing that,
What's the point?
about?
Yeah.
What's the point?
And we're really lucky, Zach, because I think a lot of people don't have what we have in terms of our team. And I don't mean just like work team, I mean like life team. Yeah. I mean, they know who they are, right? And I think, again, I get chills anytime I think about it, because we genuinely would do anything for each other and have, know, and we have been through some trials and tribulations as a group, and, and then in the end, right, we always come back to that same space of, we're all willing to do whatever it takes. And it's not all, again, I'm a little bit older than you guys, but like it's not common to find that, and that's another thing that keeps me so dedicated to this mission, is like the energy behind it. Brock says this very well, and he says all the time that just the amount of energy and blood and sweat and tears that we have put into this work, over the past decade has just been so immense that you can't not get something from that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put that kind of energy out in the world and not have some kind of impact. And I think sometimes you and I sit, because we're sitting in an office and we're trying to figure out all the hard problems, and sometimes we forget, like, we've impacted 60,000 people, and they've all impacted their families and their families' families and their friends, and like what an honor, and it really is a huge honor to have had that kind of impact. And that's all I've ever wanted, since that moment that I got that plant-based book, right? Like genuinely, right? When I got that book and I had a little moment in my 20s where I was like, what am I doing? Like, I got to get my life together, and I got to take care. Like, I get one body. I feel terrible all the time, and I shouldn't, because I'm 20, like, let me get my life together. And it's amazing that, if you had kind of surveyed my life back then, and for anybody that knew me back then, I apologize, but if you had surveyed my life back then, you would have seen the people I hung around with, where that was a lot of why I was where I was, right? There were people that were not interested in doing better. We're not interested in being the best versions of themselves. They were interested in and I'm not saying anybody in particular, but they were generally interested in the least amount of work, the least amount of effort, sliding by, getting by, and so that was kind of like the energy or the mentality that I took on. But as I got older and I started putting, higher caliber folks in my life and started meeting people that were really dedicated to something, it completely changed my world.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, you are who you have.
100%.
Right. Everybody, wants to eat. Everyone. Yeah. But not many people are willing to hunt.
Not many people are willing to hunt. And I'll say this too, like, I am the only, in our really tight group, right? I'm you could sound the only woman there, right? So it's interesting. I never would have thought, like, I'm not a super girly girl, but I never would have thought that, like, I would find my people, like my tribe, my family, my brothers, like in late 20, early 30-year-old men. I never would have thought that, but like but honestly, you guys make me a better person on a daily basis. All of you, everybody in our group. And, I would die for any of you. I genuinely would. And I think you need that kind of cohesiveness if you want to change the world.
No, totally agree. We're talking about the impact that we're gonna, that we want to make in life. Our mission. I think that leads us to, this question I like to close out with.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, what is the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
I genuinely want my kids to be proud of me, and to know that my whole life's work was about making the world a better place for them. Like, genuinely. It's really about having that impact on the world, impact on humanity, on society. I think the world's in a very tumultuous place right now. I think it needs people to really, go above and beyond to try to help out their brother. You know what I mean? I really think we need that as a world right now. And that's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered as the person that was crazy, that was willing to work 5 billion hours a week because they love what they did, because it was important to them that people get access to this type of medicine. Yeah. And it was important. It's important for me, especially as a woman, and especially as, a single mom of 3 kids. I have 2 girls and a boy. I want them to know that, invite challenge. invite the difficult experiences in life, because that is what will make you better, and you'll feel like, you're contributing something in this life. And I just think that's what it's all about. I think a legacy is about getting outside of yourself, contributing something to the world, and leaving it better than you found it for the next generation.
Steph, I really love that. Me and you are right on the same page, and what that means. I just want to thanks for being here. We're just getting started here.
Yeah.
We're the path that we're on to, change the face of medicine. Start this revolution. Make this cultural shift.
Yeah.
There's not many other people that I want to do it side by side with. So again, thanks for being here. Thanks for spreading the word. To the listeners, hopefully you're inspired from today's talk. Hopefully you can take something and apply it to your everyday life to start creating that change for yourself, for your family. Stay tuned for next week's episode. If today's conversation sparked something in you, here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one strategy, one insight, one small action you heard today, and commit to it this week. Excellence isn't built in moments. It's built in the daily decisions that compound over time. Remember, you're not just building a healthier body or a more successful career. You're building a legacy that will outlast you. And that starts with the standards you set today. Thanks for listening to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. If this episode was valuable, first, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Then leave us a review to help more people find these conversations. And finally, share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. Until next Tuesday, keep raising the bar, keep pushing your limits, and keep stacking days. I'm Zach Dansell. Your legacy starts now.